conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. Well, it's been a quieter day in the Charlie Gard case today, as his mother and father, with their lawyers, get their case together because they're going to be back in court on Thursday. But one little intervention on that score that I think is noteworthy is the Vice President now of the United States of America, Mike Pence, was on a radio show overnight, and he said, "We hope and pray that little Charlie Gard gets every chance." He said he prayed for the family to be allowed to choose the greatest extent of life-saving treatment that's available to their child. So not just Donald Trump tweeting, but now Mike Pence giving quite a full interview and in quite a strong, emotional way saying those parents deserve every chance. And I hope, because I have to say, I can't even attempt to be neutral on this story. I hope they are getting together various medical submissions from all over the world that will make that judge change his mind. That's how I feel about it. Meanwhile, back in the United Kingdom, it's a year since Theresa May became Prime Minister. Cameron, of course, going after losing the referendum. And today, and we've seen it trailed over the course of the weekend, today was going to be this big relaunch of Theresa May and the Conservative Party. And she did it in conjunction with a man called Matthew Taylor, who used to work for Tony Blair. That's right, Tony Blair. And it's all about workers' rights. It's all about, and Theresa May used the word over and over and over, it's all about fairness. And it's particularly about people working in the so-called gig economy, and that's people who are driving for Deliveroo, or they're working for Uber, or whatever it is. And of course, you know, they're working hours that they're either asked to work for the firm or that they choose to work for the firm. But it's a pretty flexible arrangement. So Mr. Taylor's report contained proposals, and he's talking about people doing these irregular jobs being entitled to sick pay, paid holidays, additional protection for people suffering, unfair management, and in particular a proactive approach to workplace health. So that all sounds fine and lovely. But what Theresa May did today was to be pretty non-specific, to say it's going to be fair, it's going to be right, we need workers to be happy in what they're doing, it'll be good for society, but there wasn't that much content. On what we've seen so far, Thomson Solicitors Chief Executive Stephen Cavalier slammed it all and said he thought that the Taylor report was feeble and would only add another layer of unnecessary complexity. So she wasn't actually launching policy. She was launching a paper with this man, Matthew Taylor. She was saying, it's going to be fair. The referendum told us this country wants change. But the other thing she did that is really, really interesting is she called on the other parties in the House of Commons not just to provide opposition, but to provide constructive help. It's as if she was reaching out to Jeremy Corbyn. And I suppose you could say that thus far, over Brexit, Corbyn in many ways has been pretty helpful to her. So I'm asking you tonight that with this relaunch, 1 year on, of Theresa May's premiership, her reaching out to the Labour Party, her promise she's going to make the workplace fairer, has she done enough to win you back? If I could be quite cynical about this, did you even notice? Because frankly, my view is that this so-called relaunch has been a bit of a dud. I mean, it's on the news bulletins, but she didn't say a single memorable thing. Nothing that she said today will people be talking about. I was going to say in years to come. I doubt in a week they'll remember a single phrase. That's how I feel about it. Tell me I'm right. Tell me I'm wrong. Call me on 0345 6060 973. You can text to 84850. You can, of course, tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC. And, of course, by going to lbc.co.uk, you can watch the show live. I'm going to ask Burkhan in Sidcup, were you massively impressed today, Burkhan, with the Prime Minister?
Hell no.
Right. Okay, no, nor was I, but go on.
The problem is people don't want her to change. They don't want to change in leadership either. They want to change. They want the system to change. That's the problem. They don't want They can tell. They can see through the facade. And the people, when June 8th came and she lost the majority, people know that the system can be better for them, and she can relaunch herself as many times as she wants, but there will be no way a Jeremy Corbyn supporter will ever turn to the Conservatives.
That may be true, Burkhan, but equally there were quite a lot of people who were saying they were going to vote for Theresa May a month before the election, and then on election day didn't. Has she perhaps persuaded them that, you know, she's going to make the workplace fairer and better for employees? I mean, in many ways, her speech was about the many, not the few, to quote Jeremy Corbyn from the election campaign. But, I mean, she was almost using Corbynite-style language. Maybe that's enough, Burkhan, to win people back for her.
Well, if it is, I'm sorry, but I don't think the British people are that silly anymore. I think they go on sound bites, they go on other that we get from politicians. But when you hear her speak, it's all the same. She really is a Maybot. When you hear Jeremy Corbyn speak, I attended his speech the other day in Chingford.
Yep.
Because it's like a different thing. He says different things all the time. Like, he doesn't present himself the same. With May, I saw her pride video, and I just have to turn it off. I just don't believe in a word she says.
Does she believe in it, Burkhan? That's the thing that fascinates me.
I don't think so. I just think she prepares a speech which sounds the same all the time. She just doesn't sound different. It's always the same thing. We believe in our leadership, and we think that we are a great team, and it's just so Maybot.
Yeah. Okay. No, Burkhan, you've made your point very clearly. You are deeply sceptical that she'll win anybody back. Tony on Facebook says she needs to go. She is so socially disjointed from the people. She supports fox hunting. Oh, and plus she's a Tory. Of course she's a Tory, Tony. She's a Tory Prime Minister. Icarus says she never says anything memorable other than some strange slogan that she might use. Well, look, Icarus, I couldn't agree more. There is nothing in this relaunch that anybody will ever remember. Daryl Goodliff on Facebook says, let's be honest, if you want Labour policies, then logically you should elect a Labour government. Theresa May massively messing up playing this game. Well, Daryl, she did sound very like Corbyn. As I say, she was talking about the many and not the few. So far, no one's been convinced. But John in Formby, perhaps you thought it was a stellar performance today. I don't know.
No, I didn't.
Right, okay.
And I think when it comes to mistakes, we can talk about the many and not the few.
Right. Yeah, I certainly agree with that. She's not having a great year, John, is she, really?
Well, it's an absolute disaster. She's dead woman walking, I think. And theoretically, it's possible that she could revive her career and resurrect it. But I don't think many people believe that's going to happen.
Well, today was supposed to be about that, John. Today was supposed to be to mark that anniversary, to show this, reaching out to the whole of Parliament, encouraging Parliament to work constructively to find policy that was... I mean, this was supposed to be the day that she got back on track.
Well, it's still coming over as weak and wobbly. And if we're not careful, we're going to sleepwalk into a very left-wing government.
Well, for the moment, John, with the DUP, she does have a majority, although, of course, technically she lost one yesterday with the Tory MP losing the whip after using the N-word. So, in theory, John, they should be there until 2022.
Well, there's many a slip twixt lip and cup, as they say, and it's just not going well. But I liken this really to the last days of Thatcher. When she was going off the rails. There are still some that believe that she would have won in 1992, not least Michael Portillo, but I disagree with that. I think this is a boil that has to be lanced, and I think she's got to go.
OK, John.
The better.
John, you made your point very clearly. Thank you. Richard Long says to me on Facebook, May is going to create a situation whereby we have cross-party negotiation on Brexit in an attempt to give us soft, fake Brexit. Richard, I don't know. I mean, so far, I have to say, Jeremy Corbyn has been good on Brexit. I'm not sure how long that's going to last. John in Norwood, come and defend Mrs May for me.
Well, look, thank you for letting me onto your show.
Not a bit.
Say very briefly what a great honour it is to talk to you.
Thank you.
You're the best thing since 1381, and you're still alive.
For the moment, yeah. OK. For those that don't know what John's referring to, it's the Peasants' Revolt. And, I love the comparison. John, how's she doing?
Well, look, the BBC narrative, the Brussels Broadcasting Corporation, have cast a narrative well before the election.
Yeah.
And since, right? And we've got to get a grip of that. You have to remember, I think she did well in the general election.
Mm-hmm.
She got more or less a record number of votes, and you said people said they'd vote for her and didn't. Well, I think they did, right?
Well, at one point, John, in the polls, she was up at about 50%. So certainly some.
When you bribed a million people and said you're going to give them £30,000 each, the students would have voted for Pol Pot.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's a very interesting pub conversation. But John, she did get a lot of votes. You're right. In percentage terms, she did well, but it simply wasn't good enough. But, John, tell me something. Are you going to remember a single thing she said today in that relaunch?
She had Ramon Holes, who were prepared to wreck the country to get their own way. Mm-hmm. And she had terrorism, 2 bouts of it, which were blamed on her by the Brussels Broadcasting Corporation and the left.
Well,
she had a tough time.
She's had a very tough time. Is she still going to be there at Christmas as leader, John, in your opinion?
I don't care, so long as the transition to another reasonable leaver is achieved.
Right. So we need a leader that's a lever, John. Is that what you'd say?
Sorry?
We need a leader who's a lever.
Yes, whatever the case. And at the moment, as you say, she hasn't done that badly, and considering the circumstances, anything's better than a Leninist government.
All right, John, thank you very much. We had Lenin, Pol Pot, the whole lot there. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:15. It's the big relaunch of Mrs May's premiership, and I'm asking, has she done enough to win back your support? Did you even notice? Because I have to say, I barely did, because I don't think she said anything memorable at all today. Yes, of course, she wants to make sure that workers in the so-called gig economy have got good rights, but it's not very memorable stuff in my view. She also wants the Labour Party to help shape future policy, and Ian says to me on Twitter, May is trying to out-socialise Labour. She's forgotten she's supposed to be a Conservative. Ian, I suspect in Tory clubs up and down Milan, there'll be a few people saying that tonight. Give her a break. Cameron called and lost the referendum, then stepped down, and you did the same because you couldn't follow it through. At least she's trying to give it a go, says Peter. Well, she is certainly trying to give it a go. What I'm asking is whether she's succeeding. Theresa May is the most uninspiring Prime Minister ever. I do so wish she would unselfishly resign and allow Jacob Rees-Mogg to take over the leadership, says Gavin. And I get here, she's doing my head in. I've had it. I can't be with the Tories anymore. I want Mogg for PM and not a Labour government. And then I get Travis saying to me on Facebook, Jacob Rees-Mogg to take over perhaps. At least he's interesting to listen to and wants us out of the EU. May is feeble. So on Friday, I had the very good fortune to be sitting in the stands at Lord's, watching the Test match, which we, of course, went on to win. Joe Root's first as captain. And who was I chatting to but Jacob Rees-Mogg, who loves his cricket. And I think there's something about Jacob that does appeal to people, his absolute authenticity. So I said, Jacob, what on earth are you doing at the cricket? Your wife gave birth to your 6th child, a baby boy, yesterday. Shouldn't you be at home? He said, well, what use would I be at home? He said, we've got Nanny to sort those sort of things out. And I thought, who else in elected politics would say anything like that for fear of being criticised and being condemned? And Jacob just couldn't care less. What you see is what you get. And it is, I have to say, very, very entertaining. Herbie in Harrow. Good evening, Herbie. How are you?
Good evening, Nigel. Very well, thank you. Nice to speak to you again.
Good. So tell me, Herbie, how good was she today?
Well, I think that she's got some very bad people around her. I've been told that there's a ring of steel around her at the moment. I don't think anybody's allowed to get near her. So I've been getting to wonder what is actually happening. She's certainly made the mistake by calling the election, as you well know. and she's now paid the price for it. But I don't think we can afford to have another election or get another leadership, because I think the country will be tearing itself apart. And I think we need to see what we can do to try and get us through. She should be speaking to you and Gerard Batten to get on that table so we can get the Brexit done and dealt with, Nigel.
Well, she has she does have her Brexit negotiator, of course, in David Davis. So, she would argue that she doesn't need people like me because she's got it all covered. But it's interesting, Herbie, that when she says she wants to reach out across Parliament to formulate policy, one cynic on Facebook suggested that's her way of watering down Brexit. Is that a fear that you have?
No. If she wants help from the Lib Dems and the Labour, UKIP is also a party. You're a member of the party. You Gerard are MEPs, which should be negotiating. The EU better than anybody else.
Yeah,
she should be asking for that support.
Herbie, I don't think she wants to talk to me at all. I don't think I'm grand enough. Herbie, thank you very much. Herbie thinks UKIP should be involved in this too because they've got something to say. Well, we'll have to see. So, she's going to give workers' rights whilst telling public sector workers they can't have a pay rise. Says Andy Dixon. I guess it's a fair point. Theresa May wants to talk about fairness. She did, endlessly. What about potential nurses who can't train because the bursary has been cut? Says Spuddy on Twitter. Well, yes. Once you start talking about fairness, you have to include an awful lot of groups. Theresa May is having a laugh. She's ruined the public sector, and she talks about fairness. The only change we need is for her to stand down, says Nick in Suffolk. Gemma from Rosendale in Lancashire. Did she have a good day, Gemma?
No, I don't think she did.
Right, go on.
And I'll be honest with you, I've been watching, I've just been saying to this lady a minute ago, I've been watching politics now for a long time. I'm 41, I've been watching it since the age of 11. When I had my first paper round and bought my first paper. And I've been into politics, news, media ever since then. And I'll be honest with you, Conservatives they've been gone for so long. They're holding on by the skin of the teeth. And I'll tell you what's not helping them is the way they ridicule people in those Houses of Commons and turn any kind of argument, it doesn't matter what it is, they turn it into a personal thing.
But today wasn't that, was it? Come on, today, Gemma, today was, Matthew Taylor giving his report, the Prime Minister responding, talking about a direction of travel with people working in a so-called gig economy that would be fairer to them, that would give them more rights, and reaching out to the Labour Party.
Haven't we heard this all before?
I don't think we've heard a Prime Minister saying to the opposition, can you help us please formulate policy in quite this way? And I wonder whether that's a sign of strength or weakness.
This is a sign of her being in the middle. This is a sign of her trying to get other people to think she's good and to think the Conservative Party is good. I'm sorry, they've long need to be out. I'm not saying Labour needs to be in. What I am saying is we need somebody to take hold of this country by the reins, pull it into, take that slack in, and really, really think of everybody in this country, not just certain areas of the country, the poor, the middle class, the rich. Everybody needs to be thought of. We're all human beings. I see people suffer because of the area that I live in. I see people suffering on a daily basis. But you also see rich people suffering.
So do we need a new leader, Gemma?
That's right. We do.
Okay.
At the end of the day, Nigel is the man.
Right.
My son absolutely adores Nigel, of course.
Right.
He's called Dante, and he loves you.
Well, it's not going to happen quickly, but Gemma, thank you very much. Rob Riley says, Mog is just another one of them. He's not bothered about you or me. He's just in it for himself. Jan Butler says, sorry, Nigel, it's the first time I've ever disagreed with you. You said that Corbyn is good on Brexit. If he got in, this country would be finished, and all your campaigning for Brexit would be for nothing. Start looking at the bigger picture. Very surprised at you. Look, I'm not a natural Jeremy Corbyn supporter, but all I'm saying is he did sack 3 front benchers who voted for us to stay in a single market the other week. I thought that was an encouraging sign. Jeff in Redditch, good evening. So there she was It was supposed to be the big relaunch, and Jeff, there are people coming on to support her, but with the best will in the world, it's hardly a global sensation, this speech, is it?
No, but I do feel very sorry for her, because I think she's genuinely wanting to do a good job. It's just the people that she's got round her seem to have no understanding how ordinary people think, and she can't seem to pick anything up. I mean, if you're going to deal with Mr Corbyn, you need to understand how Mr Corbyn's people think. And I don't think she has a clue. I mean, going back in my past, I was a trade unionist, and I know the training I had as a trade unionist was far superior to anything management gave to their people. And I'd look at Theresa and I think, get somebody who knows what's going on in the world to help you out there.
Is she, Jeff, is she a square peg in a round hole?
I don't exactly think she's a square peg. I think one of the difficulties you have with the Tory party is who would have been a leader if she hadn't have been a leader. I think she's a bit of a distorted peg in a hole.
Well, it could have been it could have been Boris, couldn't it? Or
no, but everybody knows Boris is Boris, and I mean, if anybody's going to take Boris serious, I mean, they're joking. Even his sister can't take him serious.
Well, I had lunch with her the other week, actually, and I thought she's rather fun. Jeff, Boris, whatever you say, he is the Home Secretary. He hasn't done badly, has he?
No, he's an intellectual person who talks on a level that people don't understand on occasions, but is also quite capable of getting down with the people in the bar and having a go with them as well.
And isn't that what?
Theresa can't do that.
No, but isn't that, Jeff, what a leader in modern Britain needs to be able to do? They need to be able to go out and talk to people genuinely, don't they?
Yeah, a leader has to be all things to all people, and you have to change depending on the circumstances in which you're in. But you don't have to show it. And unfortunately for her, she's just not getting the right advice at all. Not at all.
Does she have the personality, Jeff, to be our leader in the modern 21st century?
No, a big problem that she's got is she can't think on her feet. And that's where Jeremy will win every time. And when you see her in the House of Commons parliamenting, she knows what the questions are, she has the answers, and she wipes the floor with him, as far as I'm concerned. But if you stand up in a debate, she won't have hasn't got a clue.
Which is why, Jeff, she refused to do debates with the other party leaders just a few weeks ago in the general election. Jeff, I've got to let you go. I thank you for your call. Jeff, feeling genuinely sorry for the Prime Minister, but at the same time admitting she hasn't really got what it takes to be Prime Minister today. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30. We're discussing Mrs May's relaunch a year after she took over from David Cameron as Prime Minister. And she's reached out to the Labour Party and the House of Commons and said to them, don't just oppose me, help me form new legislation. And she's promised that workers in the so-called gig economy are going to get a fairer, better deal. And I'm asking you, has she done enough to win you back? Did you actually even notice the speech that she gave today that had been built up for the last week or so? But before I get back to that, Donald Trump Jr. has released a string of emails regarding his discussions over an offer of Russian information on Hillary Clinton. Now, this was all set up by a publicist, a former British tabloid journalist called Rob Goldstone. And the idea was that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton, and Donald Jr. was prepared to go along to a meeting to find out what it was. Now, I can assure you that the liberal media and the leftists will all be screaming, aha! We have it! Links with the Russians! But when this all sort of simmers down a little bit, what are we going to discover? We're going to discover that clearly he had no previous contacts of any kind at all with the Russians, just from the tone of the emails he's released, that no information was given, that he actually said himself he got rather frustrated with the meeting because clearly it wasn't actually going anywhere. But I think there will be a few days, as I say, when they do attack him. Donald Jr. is pretty much the best public supporter of his father that there is in the business. And he's done nothing wrong at all, and certainly nothing wrong compared to some of the things Hillary was accused of in the campaign. And I think in a week's time, this will simply have died. Meanwhile, back in the House of Commons, Boris Johnson was challenged by the Kettering Tory MP Philip Hollobone, an old school friend of mine, actually. And Hollobone said whether we should tell the European Union to go whistle for their massive payment bill that they think that we should be paying them. And Boris has said, well, he said the sums that I've seen seem to me to be extortionate. And I think go whistle is an entirely appropriate expression. Well, not dissimilar to some of the things I was saying to that nice Mr Barnier in the European Parliament a few weeks ago. Labour have snapped back and called Boris arrogant and said they're silly remarks. Well, all I can say is I don't think we're going to pay 100 billion. I don't suppose we're even going to pay 50 billion, because it is, I think, outrageous. But back to this challenge of the day, Theresa May, the relaunch. Has she won your support back? John on Facebook says she's a Remainer and a traitor. She has to go. Gosh, that's a little bit strong. Phil says, Mogg is a star. You see, we're actually now discussing Jacob Rees-Mogg, not Theresa May, because loads of you are texting and tweeting your opinions about Jacob. Mogg is a star. He doesn't need the money. He's not an egotist. He's a patriot. I love his whole approach and thinking. And Shauna thinks, everyone now realising what a weak Prime Minister we have. Pity they didn't realise that before voting in the election. Spoken, Shauna, like a true Corbynista. Peter is my next caller, and he lives in the town of Maidenhead in Berkshire. And if memory serves me correctly, Peter, your local Member of Parliament is...
Theresa May.
I thought it might be.
Quite funny that, Nigel. And over many years, I know her to be an extremely hard-working person who is always well informed in terms of facts and figures. But she's not a superwoman, and in recent times she has clearly been badly advised by all sorts of people that have given her crap information and advice. Recent times, so much has gone wrong for her that as a normal human being, the amount of stress she will be under at the moment will be quite enormous. And under stress, people do the wrong things, and their faculties are at their low ebb. At the moment, Nigel, what I'm really saying is I don't think there is a sensible, better Conservative alternative. I don't honestly see any of the other people you could mention as being credible alternatives. If the Conservatives continue to squabble in terms of MPs, it will likely lead to another election. And the only alternative is we're going to have Corbyn and a Marxist regime in England, which you could call New Russia, and it will destroy the country. So I think the alternative is keep behind Theresa May as a struggling human being, give her all the support you can, let her get on with it for at least the time being, for a year or two,
well, Peter,
or you'll get something else you really won't like.
Peter, what you've said on a human level is thoughtful and kind, and you obviously know her, and you're feeling a little bit sorry for her. And yes, I completely understand that when people are under extreme stress, it does have an effect. It has an effect physically and mentally. And I look at the Prime Minister, and she does look under the most terrible strain.
Yes.
And I understand that, and I don't for 1 minute, because you told me, doubt that she's been assiduous as a local Member of Parliament and got to grips with the issues, and I believe every word of that. However, there is a big difference, I think, between being a good local MP or even a minister and becoming a Prime Minister. It's a whole different... it is like going up into the Premier League. It's a different class to anything that people have played in before. And I'm not so sure, Peter, she's actually up to it. As for your point about a leader, well, that I think is the big fear within the Conservative Party, is that if she does resign or is removed in some way, that it will lead to a huge open civil war between the Leavers and the Remainers, and chaos and the collapse of a confidence vote and a Labour government. That is the big fear, Peter, that they have. Yes. I don't think that needs to be the case. My own view, of course, it won't surprise you, is I think we need a Leaver to lead. I think we need somebody who actually believes in Brexit, who had the courage to speak for Brexit when it wasn't very fashionable to do. Peter, time will tell, but I thank you very much for your call and your insight. There's a positive phone call about Theresa May as a person from someone that knows her. But that's a different thing to leading the country. Tony in Fareham, how well did she do today for you, Tony?
Well, I think she just frustrates me from one day to the next, really, Nigel, because as a Tory and a Leaver, she just... What she needs to do is to stand up on that soapbox and be heard and tell everybody what's happening in the European Union, what the disaster is that the poorer countries in the European Union are suffering, and do we want to get it? Do we want to go down that route? She had the opportunity to say yes. I am a Remainer, or I was a Remainer. But now I am thoroughly behind the country.
Wow.
I can see what's happening in Europe,
Tony,
and I don't want that to be part of the
Tony,
UK.
that's very interesting, because I think the situation in Italy, of course, now is very, very serious, and we will do a show on that within the next couple of weeks, where the number of migrants coming into Italy has now reached record levels, and surprise, surprise, even the United Nations say that 70% of those that are coming are not refugees and would never qualify as them. So there are crises over there, very much. But your point about her now saying she's really behind it... But Jeremy Paxman asked her in that interview 4 times.
Yes, exactly.
As a Remainer, do you now believe in Brexit? And she just said, we're going to carry out the will of the people. Tony, she doesn't believe in it.
Yes, no, absolutely. And as you say, she is now a square peg in a round hole, because it's totally different than being Home Secretary, where you can hide behind your fellow front benches.
Yes.
It's a totally different ball game, and she had a golden opportunity to have the public eating out of her hand at the start of this, really, and she threw it away.
Well, she also, Tony, had a chance to relaunch today, didn't she? She could have said some of those things today and chose not to do them. And actually, I wonder whether today, by saying we need everybody else to help us form policy, I wonder whether today wasn't more about followership than leadership.
Well, I think, yeah. Can you imagine David Davis ever saying that?
No, I can't. I really can't.
Well, there you go. So
Tony, I can't.
He's the person who should be taking the country forward, as far as I'm concerned.
Fair enough, Tony. Thank you. Tony, a David Davis backer, and pretty clear about it. Richard said it's so tough because I never wanted May to win, but I didn't want Corbyn to win even more. Jan says, May is doing OK. Nigel, if you would prefer to listen to Mr Corbyn and all his nonsense, then you've gone down in my estimations. Jan, I'm not a Corbyn supporter. How many times do I have to say this? But at least he appears to be a human being that goes out and meets people, and that's the problem, I think, with Theresa May, is that she's just not going out and doing that. And on Twitter I get, Jacob Rees-Mogg is too intelligent to become our Prime Minister. Right now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 7:45. With Theresa May's relaunch today, a year on from taking over from David Cameron as Prime Minister, I'm asking you whether she's done enough to win back your confidence and support, or whether, in fact, you even noticed, because it doesn't seem to me to have been a particularly memorable speech. And a lot of you clearly saying she needs to go, a lot of you feeling in some ways quite sorry for her and feeling that she's really caught in a very difficult situation. I'm going to go next to Lynn in Chipping Norton, Oxfordshire. That's real Cameron country, Lynn, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Nigel.
Good evening. So what do you think, Lynn?
I think she's in a really, really difficult situation. She took over and she's not the right person. I'm not a Chipping Norton person. I'm actually from Liverpool.
Okay, right.
I'm a Scouser.
Oh, gosh.
But no.
Have you changed your accent? Have you changed your accent living in Chipping Norton, Lynn, or not?
No. I haven't got a Chipping Norton. I have a nil accent. But
okay.
What happened with me in the 70s was there were no jobs in Liverpool.
Yep.
I moved to London.
Yep.
I went south. I left my family, and I made my income in the south of England. And now I'm living with my second husband in Oxfordshire, in Chipping Norton. But I think Theresa May is the wrong person. It's unfortunate she inherited it from David Cameron. She is not soft enough, gentle enough. She doesn't have the compassion And leading up to the election, she didn't see it. She couldn't see it. She couldn't. What she did was she hammered people like me. I'm a pensioner. I'm not quite. I'm not entitled to my state pension, but I'm 63. She hammered us. And why did she bring in this stupid thing about fox hunting? It upset an awful lot of us.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's judgment,
I'm an animal
perhaps.
carer, Nigel.
Yeah.
I rescue birds. I rescue hedgehogs and do all that kind of thing. Sensible, nice or soppy things, depending on where you come from. But I don't see where she was coming from. She's the wrong person.
She's the wrong person. Lynn,
wrong person. Nigel...
You couldn't be clearer, really. Yeah, go on.
Nigel...
Go on.
If you stood for it... I'd vote for you.
Would you? Right, Lynn, you're charming. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Lynn, making the point that she's just not the right person, and making that point without any venom of any kind at all. Dear Nigel, how wonderful to hear all of this criticism of Theresa May. What she lacks is sincerity, which someone needs to tell her is something that can't be faked, says Andrew in Herne Hill. Well, I'm sure that's true. May is dead in the water. We need Jacob Rees-Mogg as Prime Minister and let him make you the deputy. That's not going to happen, Kevin from Doncaster. But more, I mean, is this Jacob Rees-Mogg mania just on this show, just on LBC? Is it sweeping the country? I don't know. We've seen a lot of it tonight. We have new problems cropping up every day because of this government. They have no control over the affairs of this country. It does feel a little bit rudderless. Theresa May is an administrator, not a leader, says Rob. There's not much support for Theresa. If you think Theresa May actually made a good fist of it today in difficult circumstances, please, please, please call me on 0345 60 60 973. Ben in Bristol, good evening.
Hi, Nigel.
Hi.
Maybe waiting on the line for. Maybe on the line 40 minutes, Nigel. This better be good, eh?
Oh, I'm sorry. Right, Ben, if you've been there 40 minutes, the floor is yours. I'll sit back. Tell us what you've got to say.
All right. Well, you're free to interrupt me if you want. But you know what? I think Theresa May is a great woman. I think she's actually... I'm not really interested in hedgehogs or bunny rabbits. I'm interested in a strong woman who can lead the country right now, who's got the moral and spiritual clarity for the job. I'm not interested in the media hype, the BBC, every day. They seem to not be satisfied until she's literally on screen slashing her wrists, saying, I can't take it anymore. She can take it. That is a strong woman. Get through the last 3 weeks, what she's been through. People blaming her for some flats burning down, which weren't even under her jurisdiction. And by the way, they say the election was foolishness. It wasn't foolishness at all. You yourself know the problems Scotland would have caused if they were trying to push the Brexit through with an agenda for having a referendum up there. That election smashed Scotland out of the water. Yeah, she lost a few seats, but she actually got on side with the DUP, who in many respects are much more moral and much more clear-sighted party than the Tories have been for the last 20 years, and reset a few of their misfired buttons.
Well,
getting them back on
Scotland,
back
Ben.
Theresa May.
Scotland, Ben, was Scotland was the real surprise out of this election in one way, wasn't it? Because
it put a big smile on your face.
You know, 12 Tory seats in Scotland, nationalism clearly, or separatism, which is what it really is, clearly past its high watermark. She may have some problems with those Scottish MPs in the sense that quite a few of them appear to be edging a little bit towards the single market. But no, that turned out to be a success. But I would suggest, Ben, that that was more by accident than it was by design. I mean, you say she's a strong woman, and that's fine. I mean, I like strong leaders. But surely a strong leader needs at times to show a sense of humour and needs to show some warmth. And Ben, you know, that block of flats, you can't blame her for them burning down. But, you know, when the Queen goes after a terrorist incident, she goes to a hospital, you know, in Manchester and visits and shakes hands with the victims. When the Queen turns up, you know, at the Grenfell Tower, you know, she meets parts of the community. The Prime Minister, this Prime Minister, Ben, that you're backing, turns up, shakes hands with the police chief and the fire chief and leaves. Surely that's not the kind of leadership that we need.
That's not what happened. You know she went into the hospitals. You know she met the firefighters.
Later.
She would have got... That mob was so stirred up by Jeremy Corbyn's visit, they would have torn her to pieces. She was smart to do that. Look, the thing is, Theresa May, the whole thing with the election, which, by the way, she polled a massive result compared to... She polled the same amount of people who voted for Blair in 97. The thing about her is she's not showbiz. That's why it was good that your friend Andrea Leadsom didn't get the leadership, and she did, because Andrea Leadsom can't cope with it. People criticise her on Twitter. Theresa May doesn't sit up all night reading the Daily Mail and watching the BBC and reading Facebook comments. comments, she gets on with the job. I believe she's got divinely imparted into her heart a sense of why she's here and what she's made for. And okay, she wasn't on side with the Brexit beforehand, but everyone's going to be allowed to change her mind. And she was stitched up by the very people who your friends, whether you meant it or not, the Labour voters up north who were so thick that they couldn't figure that having voted Brexit, that they then had to vote Tory in the election to see that. I mean, how stupid.
But Ben,
she made herself vulnerable to those.
I don't think we should write off.
Popular,
I don't think we should run off the whole of the Northern English Labour vote as being sick.
You know what I'm saying.
But you see, what happened was she said this election's about Brexit, and Corbyn said we're for Brexit, we're for leaving the single market, we're for ending free movement of people.
You know he wouldn't have done it, Nigel. You're not stupid. You know what would have happened. The only party that could have pushed it through was May. She said, you want the Brexit, I'll do the Brexit. That was what she stood for. She stood on making no promises to anybody, didn't offer handouts to anybody, said she'll stand with Trump, which is totally right, and you saw when they were shaking hands the other day, you know, and she stood on a totally unpopular mandate and still polled 43%.
No. She did get a lot of votes. She did get a lot of votes. It wasn't the 50% that was predicted a few weeks before the election.
She still won it.
But no, Ben, you make the point that she's a strong leader who's come through difficult circumstances. I thank you for the point. And Ben there actually has, to some extent, balanced the debate, because we were struggling to find people who were full of admiration for Mrs May. My last caller of the evening is Karen in Red Hill. Karen, good evening. How did she do?
Hello there, Nigel.
Hi.
I feel a little bit sorry for Theresa May. I must admit, I haven't seen or heard the speech as yet, but I do feel that she's stuck between the devil and a hard place, and I feel that some people in her party are prepared to stab her in the back, particularly Nicky Morgan and Anna Soubry. I think there's a lot of sour grapes there. But one thing I would say, which has puzzled me, is why on earth was Dan Hannan not allowed to stand as a Conservative MP?
Well, Dan Hannan, for those that don't know him, is a Eurosceptic Tory MEP. I think because he's seen as a troublemaker, Karen, who was busy playing games of subterfuge with UKIP, and that's not the kind of thing that Theresa May likes very much. I'm guessing that's the reason why. Karen, will she still be there at Christmas?
I don't think she will be. I would like to see Rees-Mogg.
Another one. It's Rees-Mogg mania. What is it?
Well, I would like you, really.
That's
you
very
have to join the Tory party.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I left them a very long time ago. Karen, just tell me in 10 seconds, why are so many people like you coming onto this show tonight saying it needs to be Rees-Mogg? What is it about Rees-Mogg that works?
His speeches. I think he speaks with clarity. He says it as it is. He doesn't put on airs and graces. When you listen to him, you know he's posh, but you also know that what he says is the truth, and I think he would wipe Corbyn.
Terrific. Karen, I thank you very much for your call. One other thing that Rees-Mogg has got that Mrs May doesn't, humour. And humour in politics does matter. Well, my final thought is that today was a failure. It was supposed to be the great big relaunch. Frankly, it has been a flop. There's not a single line from that speech she gave today that anybody will ever remember. It's the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.